in nothing else, just in the things that I create. You all may notice that my couch is missing. That's because it's currently being reupholstered, which is very exciting. A little bit expensive, but totally worth it. I'm very excited to see what it looks like when it comes back. It should be due back any day now. If you are at all curious about the development of my couch, you're more than welcome to check out my vlog channel, which is linked down below for you. In the meantime, while I relax you with my ever so charming British accent, I will also be reading to you. This book is one I just picked up the other day. I was about to say I don't know why I picked it up, but I do in fact know why. Here on the spine it says a wonder book, and that to me just screamed of all things magical and enchanting, and I had to pick it up. It's so old. The pages are literally falling off the spine, which makes it even more lovely in my eyes. It is apparently a children's book that tells some lovely old tales. I'm not entirely sure what it contains. I haven't read it yet, but I thought it would be fun if we read a little bit of it together. The thing that made me buy it, if you're curious, is a word that this book contained on its first page. The word is a very special one to me because it's a word that is also in my book, which is not yet published, but in the beta reader stage. So excited. I'll tell you the word because I'm sure you're curious, and you can be happy in the knowledge that it's a teeny tiny little spoiler. The word is Tanglewood. The chapter is called Tanglewood Porch, Introductory to the Gorgon's Head. I sent this front page to my friend who is also my beta reader. Apparently very hard to say that in a British accent. She informed me that Gorgon's Head refers to Medusa and her two sisters because they're considered Gorgons. My Greek mythology knowledge is severely lacking, so I think we're going to find out together. Let's get started. Are you snuggled up? Do you have a blanket? Something warm to hold? Hot chocolate? Coffee? If you're going to sleep, make sure it's decaf. Okay. Beneath the porch of the country seat called Tanglewood, one fine autumnal morning was assembled a merry party of little folks, with a tall youth in the midst of them. They had planned a nutting expedition, and were impatiently waiting for the mists to roll up the hill slopes, and for the sun to pour the warmth of the Indian summer over the fields and pastures and into the nooks of the many-coloured woods. There was the prospect of as fine a day as ever gladdened the aspect of this beautiful and comfortable world. As yet, however, the morning mist filled up the whole length and breadth of the valley, above which, on a gently sloping eminence, the mansion stood. This body of white vapour extended to within less than 100 yards of the house. It completely hid everything beyond that distance, except a few ruddy or yellow treetops, which here and there emerged and were glorified by the early sunshine, as was likewise the broad surface of the mist. 4 or 5 miles off to the southward rose the summit of Monument Mountain, and seemed to be floating on a cloud. Some 15 miles farther away, in the same direction, appeared the loftier dome of Teton. mentioned, being as full of life as they could hold, kept overflowing from the porch of Tanglewood and scampering along the gravel walk or rushing across the dewy herbage of the lawn. I can hardly tell how many of these small people there were, not less than 9 or 10, however, nor more than a dozen, of all sorts, sizes, and ages, whether girls or boys. They were brothers, sisters, and cousins, together with a few of their young acquaintances, who had been invited by Mr. and Mrs. Pringle to spend some of this delightful weather with their own children at Tanglewood. I am afraid to tell you their names, or even give them any names which other children have ever been called by, because, to my certain knowledge, authors sometimes get themselves into great trouble by accidentally giving the names of real persons to the characters in their books. Guilty. For this reason, I mean to call them Primrose, Periwinkle, Sweet Fern, Dandelion, Blue Eye, Clover, Huckleberry, Cowslip, Squash Blossom, Milkweed, Plantain, and Buttercup, although, to be sure, such titles might better suit a group of fairies than a company of earthly children. It is not to be supposed that these little folks were to be permitted by their careful fathers and mothers, uncles and aunts and grandparents to stray abroad into the woods and fields without the guardianship of some particularly grave and elderly person. Oh no, indeed. In the first sentence of my book you will recollect that I spoke of a tall youth standing in the midst of the children. His name, and I shall let you know his real name, because he considers it a great honour to have told the stories that are here to be printed. His name was Eustace Bright. He was a student at Williams College and had reached, I think, at this period, the venerable age of 18 years, so that he felt quite like a grandfather toward Periwinkle, Dandelion, Huckleberry, Squash Blossom, Milkweed, and the rest, who were only half or a third as vulnerable as he. A trouble in his eyesight, such as many students think it necessary to have nowadays in order to prove their diligence at their books, had kept him from college a week or two after the beginning of the term. But for my part, I have seldom met with a pair of eyes that looked as if they could see farther or better than those of Eustace Bright. This learned student was slender and rather pale, as all Yankee students are, but yet of a healthy aspect, and as light and active as if he had wings on his shoes. By the by, being much addicted to wading through streamlets and across meadows, he had put on cowhide boots for the expedition. He wore a linen blouse, a cloth cap, and a pair of green spectacles, which he had assumed probably less for the preservation of his eyes than for the dignity that they imparted to his countenance. In either case, however, he might as well have let them alone, for Huckleberry, a mischievous little elf, crept behind Eustace as he sat on the steps of the porch, snatched the spectacles from his nose, and clapped them on her own, and as the student forgot to take them back, they fell off into the grass and lay there till the next spring. Now Eustace Bright, you must know, had won great fame among the children as a narrator of wonderful stories, and though he sometimes pretended to be annoyed when they teased him for more, and always for more, yet I really doubt whether he liked anything quite so well as to tell them. You might have seen his eyes twinkle, therefore, when Clover, Sweet Fern, Cowslip, Buttercup, and most of their playmates besought him to relate one of his stories while they were waiting for the mist to clear up. "Yes, Cousin Eustace," said Primrose, who was a bright girl of 12, with laughing eyes and a nose that turned up a little. "The morning is certainly the best time for the stories with which you so often tire out our patience. We shall be in less endless repetitions. But Eustace Bright, in the exuberance of his resources, scorned to avail himself of an advantage which an older storyteller would have been glad to grasp at. "It would be a great pity," he said, "if a man of my learning, to say nothing of original fancy, could not find a new story every day, year in and year out, for children such as you. I will tell you one of the nursery tales that were made for the amusement of our great old grandmother, the earth, when she was a child in frock and pinafore. There are 100 such, and it is a wonder to me that they have not long ago been put into picture books for little girls and boys. But instead of that, old grey bearded grandsires pore over them in musty volumes of Greek and puzzle themselves with trying to find out when and how and for what they were made." "Well, well, 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 Cousin Eustace," cried all the children at once, "talk no more about your stories, but begin." "Sit down then, every soul of you," said Eustace Bright, "and be all as still as so many mice. At the slightest interruption, whether from great naughty Primrose, little Dandelion, or any other, I shall bite the story short off between my teeth and swallow the untold part. But, in the first place, do any of you know what a Gorgon is?" "I do," said Primrose. "Then hold your tongue," rejoined Eustace, who had rather she would have known nothing about the matter. "Hold all your tongues, and I shall tell you a sweet, pretty story of a Gorgon's head." And so he did, as you may begin to read on the next page, working up his sophomorical erudition with a good deal of tact, and incurring great obligations to Professor Anthon. He nevertheless disregarded all classical authorities whenever the vagrant audacity of his imagination impelled him to do so. I just counted the pages, and it's a very long story, but I feel like I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't read at least a little. So, onward to the Gorgon's head. Perseus was the son of Danae, who was the daughter of a king, and when Perseus was a very little boy, some wicked people put his mother and himself into a chest and set them afloat upon the sea. The wind blew freshly and drove the chest away from the shore, and the uneasy billows tossed it up and down, while Danae clasped her child closely to her bosom, and dreaded that some big wave would dash its foamy crest over them both. The chest sailed on, however, and neither sank nor was upset until, when night was coming, it floated so near an island that it got entangled in a fisherman's nets, and was drawn out high and dry upon the sand. The island was called Seriphus, and it was reigned over by King Polydectes. This is going to get hard, isn't it? By King Polydectes, who happened to be the fisherman's brother. This fisherman was an exceedingly humane and upright man. He showed great kindness to Danae and her little boy, and continued to befriend them until Perseus had grown to be a handsome youth, very strong and active and skilful in the use of arms. Long before this time, King Polydectes had seen the two strangers, the mother and her child, who had come to his dominions in a floating chest. As he was not good and kind like his brother the fisherman, but extremely wicked, he resolved to send Perseus on a dangerous enterprise, in which he would probably be killed, and then to do some great mischief to Danae herself. So this bad-hearted king spent a long while in considering what was the most dangerous thing that a young man could possibly undertake to perform. At last, having hit upon an enterprise that promised to turn out as fatally as he desired, he sent for the youthful Perseus. The young man came to the palace and found the king sitting upon his throne. "Perseus," said King Polydectes, smiling craftily upon him, "you are grown up a fine young man. You and your good mother have received a great deal of kindness from myself, as well as from my worthy brother and fisherman, and I suppose you would I have thought of precisely the article. I don't know why, but I'm picturing the voice of Scar from The Lion King. Whatever that actor's name is. He's got the best bad guy voice. I can assist your majesty in obtaining it, cried Perseus eagerly. You can, if you are as brave a youth as I believe you to be, replied King Polydectes with the utmost graciousness of manner. The bridal gift which I have set my heart on presenting to the beautiful Hippodamia is the head of the Gorgon Medusa, with the snaky locks, and I depend on you, my dear Perseus, to bring it to me. So, as I am anxious to settle affairs with the princess, the sooner you go in quest of the Gorgon, the better I shall be pleased. I shall set out tomorrow morning, answered Perseus. Pray do so, my gallant youth, rejoined the king. And Perseus, in cutting off the Gorgon's head, be careful to make a clean stroke, so as not to injure its appearance. You must bring it home in the very best condition, in order to suit the exquisite taste of the beautiful Princess Hippodamia. Perseus left the palace, but was scarcely out of hearing before Polydectes burst into a laugh, being greatly amused, wicked king that he was, to find how readily the young man fell into the snare. The news quickly spread abroad that Perseus had undertaken to cut off the head of Medusa with the snaky locks. Everybody was rejoiced, for most of the inhabitants of the island were as wicked as the king himself, and would have liked nothing better than to see some enormous mischief happen to Danae and her son. The only good man in this unfortunate island of Seriphus appears to have been the fisherman. As Perseus walked along, therefore, the people pointed after him and made mouths and winked to one another and ridiculed him as loudly as they dared. Ho, ho, they cried, Medusa's snakes will sting him soundly. Now, there were 3 Gorgons alive at the period, and they were the most strange and terrible monsters that had ever been seen since the world was made, or that have been seen in after days, or that are likely to be seen in all time to come. I hardly know what sort of creature or hobgoblin to call them. They were 3 sisters, and seemed to have borne some distant resemblance to women, but were really a very frightful and mischievous species of dragon. It is indeed difficult to imagine what hideous beings these 3 sisters were. Why, instead of locks of hair, if you can believe me, they had each of them 100 enormous snakes growing on their heads, all alive, twisting, wriggling, curling, and thrusting out their venomous tongues with forked stings at the end. The teeth of the Gorgons were terribly long tusks, their hands were made of brass, and their bodies were all over scales, which, if not iron, were something as hard and impenetrable. They had wings too, and exceedingly splendid ones, I can assure you, for every feather in them was pure, bright, glittering, burnished gold, and they looked very dazzling, no doubt, when the Gorgons were flying about in the sunshine. But when people happened to catch a glimpse of their glittering brightness aloft in the air, they seldom stopped to gaze, but ran and hid themselves as speedily as they could. You will think, perhaps, that they were afraid of being stung by the serpents that served the Gorgons instead of hair, or of having their heads bitten off by their ugly tusks, or of being torn all to pieces by their brazen claws. Well, to be sure, these were some of the dangers, but by no means the greatest nor the most difficult to find. For the worst thing about these abominable Gorgons was that if once a poor mortal fixed his eyes full upon one of their faces, he was certain that very instant to be changed from warm flesh and blood into cold and lifeless stone. Thus, as you will easily perceive, it was a very dangerous adventure that the wicked King Polydectes had contrived for this innocent young man. Perseus himself, when he had thought over the matter, could not help seeing that he had very little chance of coming safely through it, and that he was was far more likely to become stone image than to bring back the head of Medusa with the snaky locks. For, not to speak of other difficulties, there was one which it would have puzzled an older man than Perseus to get over. Not only must he fight with and slay this golden-winged, iron-scaled, long-tusked, brazen-clawed, snaky-haired monster, but he must do it with his eyes shut, or at least without so much as a glance at the enemy with whom he was contending. Else, while his arm was lifted to strike, he would stiffen into stone, and stand with that uplifted arm for centuries, until time and the wind and weather should crumble him quite away. This would be a very sad thing to befall a young man who wanted to perform a great many brave deeds, and to enjoy a great deal of happiness in this bright and beautiful world. So disconsolate did these thoughts make him, that Perseus could not bear to tell his mother what he had undertaken to do. He therefore took his shield, girded on his sword, and crossed over from the island to the mainland, where he sat down in a solitary place, and hardly refrained from shedding tears. But while he was in this sorrowful mood, he heard a voice close behind him. "Perseus," said the voice, "why are you so sad?" He lifted his head from the sands in which he had hidden it, and behold, all alone as Perseus had supposed himself to be, there was a stranger in the solitary place. It was a brisk, intelligent, and remarkably shrewd-looking young man, with a cloak over his shoulders, an odd sort of cap on his head, a strangely twisted staff in his hand, and a short and very crooked sword hanging by his side. He was exceedingly light and active in his figure, like a person much accustomed to gymnastic exercises, and well able to leap or run. Above all, the stranger had such a cheerful, knowing, and helpful aspect, though it was certainly a little mischievous into the bargain, that Perseus could not help feeling his spirits grow livelier as he gazed at him. Besides, being really a courageous youth, he felt greatly ashamed that anybody should have found him with tears in his eyes, like a timid little schoolboy, when, after all, there might be no occasion for despair. So Perseus wiped his eyes and answered the stranger pretty briskly, putting on as brave a look as he could. "I am not so very sad," he said, "only thoughtful about an adventure I have undertaken." "Oh," answered the stranger, "well, tell me all about it, and possibly I may be of service to you. I have helped a good many young men through adventures that look difficult beforehand. Perhaps you may have heard of me. I have more names than one, but the name of Quicksilver suits me as well as any other. Tell me what your trouble is, and we will talk the matter over and see what can be done." The stranger's words and manner put Perseus into quite a different mood from his former one. He resolved to tell Quicksilver all his difficulties, since he could not easily be worse off than he already was, and very possibly his new friend might give him some advice that would turn out well in the end. So he let the stranger know, in a few words, precisely what the case was, how that King Polydectes wanted the head of Medusa with the snaky locks as a bridal gift for the beautiful princess Hippodamia, I'm not sure, and how that he had undertaken to get it for him, but was afraid of being turned into stone. "And that would be a great pity," said Quicksilver, with his mischievous smile. "You would make a very handsome marble statue, it is true, and it would be a considerable number of centuries before you crumbled away, but, on the whole, one would rather be a young man for a few years than a stone image for a great many." "Oh, far rather," exclaimed Perseus, with the tears again standing in his eyes. "And besides, what would my dear mother do if her beloved son were to turn into stone? Well, well, let us hope that the affair will not turn out so very badly," replied Quicksilver in an encouraging tone. "I am the very person to help you if anybody can. My sister and myself will do our utmost to bring you safe through the adventure, ugly as it now looks." "Your sister?" repeated Perseus. "Yes, my sister," said the stranger. "She is very wise, I promise you, and as for myself, I generally have all my wits about me, such as they are. If you show yourself bold and cautious, and follow our advice, you need not fear of being a stone image yet awhile. But, first of all, you must polish your shield till you can see your face in it as distinctly as in a mirror." I see what he's doing. This seemed to Perseus rather an odd beginning of the adventure, for he thought it of far more consequence than the shield should be strong enough to defend him from the Gorgon's brazen claws, than that it should be bright enough to show him the reflection of his own face. However, concluding that Quicksilver knew better than himself, he immediately set to work and scrubbed the shield with so much diligence and goodwill that it very quickly shone like the moon at harvest time. Quicksilver looked at it with a smile and nodded his approbation. Then, taking off his own short and crooked sword, he girded it about Perseus, instead of the one which he had before worn. "No sword but mine will answer your purpose," observed he. "The blade has a most excellent temper, and will cut through iron and brass as easily as though the slenderest twig. And now we will set out. The next thing is to find the 3 grey women, who will tell us where to find the nymphs." "3 grey women!" cried Perseus, to whom this seemed only a new difficulty in the path of his adventure. "Pray, who may the 3 grey women be? I never heard of them before." "They are 3 very strange old ladies. They have but 1 eye among them," said Quicksilver, laughing, "and only 1 tooth. Moreover, you must find them out by starlight, or in the dusk of the evening, for they never show themselves by the light either of the sun or moon." "But," said Perseus, "why should I waste my time with these 3 grey women? Would it not be better to set out at once in search of the terrible Gorgons?" "No, no," answered his friend. "There are other things to be done before you can find your way to the Gorgons. There is nothing for it but to hunt up these old ladies, and when we meet with them, you may be sure that the Gorgons are not a great way off. Come, let us be stirring." Perseus by this time felt so much confidence in his companion's sagacity that he made no more objections, and professed himself ready to begin the adventure immediately. I think I'll leave it there for today. If you are enjoying this story, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I'm personally intrigued and want to read more. As I said before, my knowledge of Greek mythology is rather lacking, and although these stories are vaguely familiar, thank you, Hercules from Disney and The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, I know next to nothing about the story of Perseus, Medusa, the Gorgons, or the 3 grey women. So I'm much eager to read the rest of this story. If you are too, let me know in the comments down below, and I can turn this into a kind of series if you'd like, and read some more to you another time. Thank you so much for watching. I really, truly appreciate it. I'm glad that you are enjoying what I've been posting, particularly the British accent one. That's been really encouraging to me to hear, because it's something I genuinely enjoy doing. Accents are something I genuinely enjoy, and to know that you enjoy it as well is just really heartwarming. So thank you. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a future video, and I'll see you next time. Love you guys.